Never shall innocent blood be shed, yet the blood of the wicked shall flow like a river. The three shall spread their blackened wings and be the vengeful striking hammer of God. You people have been chosen to reveal our existence to the world. You will witness what happens here today, and you will tell of it later. All eyes to the front. You must watch, dear. It'll all be over soon.
Now you will receive us. We do not ask for your poor or your hungry. We do not want your tired and sick.
It is your corrupt we claim.
It is your evil that will be sought by us.
With every breath, we shall hunt them down.
Each day, we will spill their blood till it rains down from the skies.
Do not kill, do not rape, do not steal. These are principles which every man of every faith can embrace.
These are not polite suggestions. These are codes of behavior. And those of you that ignore them will pay the dearest cost.
There are varying degrees of evil. We urge you lesser forms of filth, not to push the bounds and cross over into true corruption, into our domain.
For if you do, one day you will look behind you and you will see we three. And on that day, you will reap it.
And we will send you to whatever God you wish.
And shepherds we shall be, for thee, my Lord, for thee. Power hath descended forth from thy hand. Therefore may swiftly carry out thy command. So we shall flow ever forth to thee, and teeming with souls shall it ever be.
In nomine Patri.
Et Filii, Spiritus Sancti.
How far are we going to take this, Star?
The question is not how far. The question is, do you possess the Constitution, the depth of faith to go as far as is needed?
Hey guys.
Good evening, gentlemen.
So,
Hello.
So we get accused of being dry. So we figured we would embrace our inner dryness tonight. And tonight I have for you legal documents.
Oh, fun.
We actually will read a little bit of the CFRs tonight. That's the US Code of Federal Regulations. I promise there's a reason for that because I am trying to make a point. So, do you guys have any?
What's the topic?
So, the topic tonight is DEI failures.
Wait a minute. We're kind of a red pill channel. Does this relate to red pill stuff?
Well, it involves a woman.
Oh, okay. Good enough for me.
We unfortunately for the women tonight, we are picking on you, and there's going to be a lot of people that do not like what I have to say. A lot of what I have to say will be viewed as controversial, not because it should be, but because we've been trained that it shouldn't be. Oh, okay. Tacticus. Yeah, we're probably in the space where YouTube won't. So yeah, I would just expect that.
Hey, it's the same time every week.
Right.
Set your own notification.
Defeat the Google. Yeah, so
sometimes the AI gets messed up.
yeah. So tonight we are going to open the conversation. We won't end here. We're going to open with the Delta 4819 crash in Toronto earlier this year. Transport Canada is the investigating board on that primary, and they put out a preliminary report. And I have to now stress here that this is a preliminary. It is not the final report, and there are no accusations made in this report. It is actually this report is simply a readout of the evidence. This is, however, a legal document. This will be considered part of the legal investigation, so you can take it with a grain of trust that this is the direction that it's the transportation's TCSB, Transport Canada Safety Board, is going to take with this. So, for the record, I am in fact a pilot. So, I actually am qualified to talk about this, and I have to state that up front. People might not agree with the conclusions I come to, but the evidence is all sitting here. And one of the things I found fascinating reading this particular document was how much effort they put dancing around the fact that she's a she. In fact, it's like in the second paragraph, they start the dance. It's really kind of sad. So, have I properly introed, Steve?
I think so. It's amazing the amount of effort that goes into how to tell the story without holding any woman accountable.
Maybe
I'm getting ahead of myself here.
No, you're not. As I was reading this, as I was watching this, I was just flabbergasted. I couldn't believe that this happened. Because the mistakes that were made are mistakes that are taught. We're taught how to deal with them. Maybe not the first flight, but definitely by the second or third one. Like the first time you ever go up in an airplane. What's the most important part of taking an airplane off the ground?
Putting it back down.
Oh, wow. landing it again. Exactly. And again, the document dances around pretty hard, but they do have a readout of the flight data recorder, and they do list the actual actions that were taken. And there's a point where I'm going to say this action right here is where the accident actually occurred. Yeah, okay, the plane smacked the ground later, but the accident actually occurred here, and that is going to be a multifaceted failure of a lot of different things. So, okay. So the first thing I want to do is we're just going to show a quick little video, no sound. And in fact, when I first saw this, I intentionally watched with no sound. Okay. We're just going to watch. This is raw video from inside the flight deck of an airplane waiting to take off as this plane is landing. And Tacticus. Okay. Yes, I should address this. There are a couple reasons why I'm not doing the chopper crash. One of them is military investigations are not subject to public disclosure laws, and so I have no hard data. Second, there's a lot less flight data recorded in that crash to begin with. So the investigation itself will be much more speculation. This investigation is going to be, it's a much better example of the same problem. So yes, I agree with you. I have my own opinions about that helicopter crash, which end up with she should have never been sitting in that on that flight deck. So, but we're going to look at the Delta one today because
lack of
frankly,
public record.
yeah. Well, we're going to be looking at the Delta one today because frankly, we've got better info to make the point with. And by the way, this idea has been banging around in our ideas folder for a while. We finally, I think we actually had the idea before the preliminary report came out. So, yeah, let's, so we're just going to watch this video here first. No sound. This is just the crash as it happened. Okay. This right here is the aircraft that's coming into land. And that's pretty much it. Crashes don't take very long to happen, but the actual point that the crash occurs is all the way back here. It's actually right about there. And you can see there, this is a pretty good shot of it. As we get into the timeline, you'll see why the crash occurs actually here. So, but that's it. That's the crash.
Hey,
And the other,
I got some questions for you.
Okay.
At this moment in time, is the airplane over the runway?
Yes. This, so if you can see this yellow line and these markers are the barrier point where airplanes are supposed to stay outside of to wait to enter a runway.
Okay, so there's couple 500 feet of runway to the left of us here.
Yes, there is runway behind the airplane. Yes.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you know what? The other thing I can see right here, this airplane is still pretty far off the ground.
I did some measurements. This airplane is about 100 feet off the ground at this point. If we look back here, that is about 200 feet off the ground, roughly. The data readouts actually do go a little bit into the altitudes. it ends up not mattering that much
Okay.
for reasons that we're going to get into. So,
Good,
and
no, I don't.
well, airplanes are they're like any other, shoe. You like cars, for example. Cars are just energy. They're just applied physics. They are just energy, contained in an engine, and that is translated to the road via the drivetrain and wheels. Airplanes aren't much different. The energies involved are definitely greater, but that same basic principle of energy management is something that pilots are taught very, very early on. And you guys are going to, as we go through this, you guys are going to see why. So we will now click over to the very boring, very dry Transport Canada article. Is this big enough for you guys?
I can see it.
Yeah.
All right. So this would be the they call it the TSBC. There's the actual investigation number. Yes, this is a preliminary report. It was released March 20th of this year. Don't need to read that, the summary, because we're going to get into it. Key points that I want you guys to focus on. The captain was seated in the left seat as per custom and was the pilot monitoring. So we don't use captain and co-pilot in the aviation industry anymore. We use PM and PF. Pilot monitoring, pilot flying. Pilot monitoring, his job is to be 5 minutes ahead of the airplane. He's planning the next move. He's talking to air traffic control. He's got charts and he's doing fuel management. The pilot flying's job is to fly the plane, manage energy, make sure the airplane is on course, make sure the airplane is performing as necessary. So the first officer was seated in the right seat and was the pilot flying. She, and it is a she. We all know this. This was reported in the press. I'm not going to go prove it here. She was in physical control of the airplane. Per standard training techniques on landing, that means she had one hand on the flight controls, one hand on the throttles. And I'm building up to something here because that's important. The fact that by training, she's supposed to have one hand on the flight controls, one hand on the throttles. She's supposed to be managing the airplane's attitude and energy. Okay. And this is where the scapegoating is going to start. The people involved are going to be desperate to blame the wind because there was a wind. Okay. We have methods and procedures for dealing with that. In fact, here is the quote from the company flight manual. Like this is Bible as far as pilots are concerned. Right here. Final approach is flown at VREF. Don't worry about what VREF is. Plus 5 knots. When operating in gusty wind conditions, as was the case that day, the winds were 23, gusting up around 35 knots, if I recall correctly. Later on in this document, they actually do talk about what the wind conditions were. Increase VREF by half the gust factor, not to exceed 10 knots indicated airspeed. Okay. On the occurrence flight, the flight crew set the speed bug to VREF plus 5 or 144. And given the reported wind gusts, approach was flown at 149. And as we can see, the aircraft is doing 150, 149. Honestly, close enough, right?
Yeah.
Everyone was freaked out about the ground speed. Airplanes.
Immaterial.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Why was it moving so slow? Well, this tells you what the wind speed was, 29 knots. That's all it tells you, right? That's it. The ground speed doesn't matter. Here's another key factor. We use something called N1. N1 is just a fancy term for the speed of the big fan in the front of the engine that you can see. Okay. And that might be, it's one of the two. There's N2, which is the hot section revolution speed, and we mostly don't pay attention to that. So 64% N1. You could call it 64% thrust. This is pretty typical when you're landing. You're trying to kill airspeed. You're trying to get down on the ground. You don't want to carry too much thrust. Now, 64% is probably more than you would need for, say, a no wind landing, right? So, okay, so they're doing it right. They've got extra thrust on. They've got extra speed on. The rate of descent. By the way, rate of descent is going to be the key factor here. 720 feet per minute is a little fast, but not much. Certainly not enough to even damage the aircraft. 5 seconds later, the pilot flying disconnected the autopilot. This is pretty normal. You're going to be doing last minute jostling to keep the airplane on center line and on glide slope. And it was windy, but it wasn't the visibility wasn't particularly bad. I mean, you guys could see as that airplane flew down the runway that, you could just see the airplane keep going in the video. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay.
Hey, I want to say something. 720 feet per minute. That's like 12 feet per second.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
Okay. What's the gravity? What, 32 feet per second?
Yeah, something like
If you
that.
drop a ball. So, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not excessive. And then you kind of typically feather it out at the end.
Via flare. Yeah, that's what we call the flare.
You flare it. Yeah. Okay. Flare it out. So, okay. I just want to put that in perspective. 720 seems like a high number. Yeah. Okay. I agree with you. It's not really that high.
Yeah. And it's key to remember that this is an accident that takes place in less than a minute. And we're talking feet per minute here, right? So feet per minute and thrust settings, this is going to be the key to the whole accident. And as we step through this document, you're going to see that something happens. Okay, so 29 seconds later, while the aircraft was 153 feet AGL, the airspeed increased to 154. Now, this means that it got a little fast. This is not uncommon in gusty conditions. You get a big wind gust comes through, your indicated airspeed will go up even as your airspeed over the ground goes down. But as far as the wing is concerned, indicator is the only one that matters. So the pilot flying pulled back on the thrust levers, and as a result, over the following 5 seconds, N1 decreased from 64% to 43%, where it remained until touchdown. Remember how I said the accident has actually started before the accident, before the crash? This, where it remained until touchdown, as we're going to see in a little bit, is where the accident actually happened. Naturally, you reduce power, airspeed will decrease. We expect this. Okay. Stepping through 10 seconds later. Okay, 3.6 seconds for touchdown. This is where they're 50 feet above ground. So if you remember that video, they've already flown past that plane. Okay. EGPWS is a system. It's a downward facing radar that's highly accurate, tells us on big jets how far we are above ground. So you see that. 1 second later, 2.6 seconds before touchdown, the EGPWS yells out sink rate. Now, this is a very loud alarm. It is designed to get your attention. And this close to the runway, there is what we call memory items. But really, it's just what you're supposed to do the moment you hear it. If I hear sink, my hands are moving by the time rate comes out. Okay. So you hear sink rate. Now, why is it complaining about sink rate? Well, this right here. Rate of descent increased from 700 to 1100. And this is in the span of 15 seconds. So it didn't hit them entirely. It didn't hit them like that second. This sink rate had been going on for a while. And then the engine thrust was steady at approximately 43. Okay. Here's where I have to stop. That sink rate alarm is designed to get your attention. Okay. Because as a pilot, when you see that or hear that indication, the very first thing you do is you slam the throttle forward. I don't care what plane you're flying. I don't care what your training says. It should be instinct. You hear it, you see it, you feel it, you slam the throttle forward.
And you abandon the landing and you say, screw this, I'm going around.
Well, that's exactly. Now, a bunch of very nerdy people will come in and they will say, aha, but it takes 3 to 5 seconds for a aircraft to generate power. Well, no. It does take time for a jet engine to spool up. However, it is the power it's generating increases as it spools up. It takes 5 seconds to go from idle to full thrust. Okay. That's what that actually means. If the moment she heard sink rate, she had 3 seconds, 2.5. Okay. Would the airplane have hit the ground? Yeah, probably. It still wasn't generating enough thrust, but it would have hit the ground softer. Probably would have smacked the landing gear. Would the passengers be annoyed? Yeah. You would feel it, you would know it. But I've seen plenty of aborted landings where the landing gear touched the ground. Like this is not uncommon. I watch those streams where there's those guys who they all they do is they stream landings, and I'm just watching the pilots do their work, and it's nice background noise. Okay, and occasionally you'll see one where they smack the ground, but the throttles are, the power's coming back on, and they take off and they try again.
Hey, in training, do pilots do something called a touch and go?
That will be on your first flight, yes.
So if the landing gear touches the runway, you've already experienced, oh, yeah, comes down, touches, I can still take off again. Okay. It's nothing unusual here. Nothing they haven't experienced.
Correct. The other thing that I want to state here, remember about that distinction between pilot monitoring and pilot flying.
Right.
There's 2.6 seconds that this whole thing, from sink rate to smacking the ground, right? The pilot monitoring, yes, he's the captain. Yes, he has legal authority. Yes, she screwed up. And yes, he is going to take the blame for it.
But there's not enough time for him to do crap.
There's not enough time for him to do anything because he's not touching the controls. In fact, by it's not law, but by regulation, there can only be one pilot touching the controls at a time. We even have this special litany that we go through. I have the plane, you have the plane, and then that confirms the transition of handoff. But there's some exceptions for like flight training and stuff. But in general, this guy will not have had his hands anywhere near the controls. So what these people are asking is, oh yeah, he's supposed to react. His brain is thinking about, oh, I need to be programming the radios for ground. What's the gate? What's the route we're going to get? Remember, his job is to be 5 minutes ahead of the airplane. So his brain is not, yeah, he's watching the landing, but he's not anywhere in a position to rip the controls out of her hands and do the right thing. 2.6 seconds, you have to ram the throttles the moment you hear sync. Okay, that's it. That's the hard truth of the situation. This is on her and her alone to get this right. She does not, because the engine thrust never changes. From that decrease to the moment of impact, it never changes.
So which indicates freezing.
She froze. That's my opinion.
That's what it
Again,
indicates.
that's how that's how I read this. Now, of course, there will be interviews that the interviews are not part of this document. She did survive. Both of them survived, actually. Everyone survived. Thank goodness. But there was a document put out. There's another thing that I want to get to where they talk in here later about, oh, here's a picture of the crash afterwards, missing a whole wing. This is what we call a hull loss. This aircraft will be an insurance write-off. So,
I noticed one other thing.
Go ahead.
It showed bank angle up there. Started out at 5.6 degrees. Then I went to 7.1 or 5.9 to the right. Okay, scroll down.
Well, it actually started 4.7, 5.9.
5.9. Okay, what's the next? 7.1. 7.5.
At point of impact.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Not only was she not increasing the throttles, she wasn't actually using her yoke to correct the bank angle.
This is yet another piece of evidence in my assertion that she froze.
Exactly. That's the conclusion I came to.
Right. So,
because she wasn't correcting, she wasn't correcting
anything.
it. And no, nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got the picture, personnel information. Captain, 3,500 hours of flight time. That's about normal for these regional airlines. It was his first flight. It was his first flight of his first day in 7 days. And he was an instructor. Or he was an instructor pilot, and his prior 3 days of work had been instructing, which means that this captain was very well rested. Rest is not going to be a factor on his part. Okay. When you're working simulator, you get to work a normal 9 to 5 schedule. So right. he was sleeping. He was sleeping well, because everyone's going to say, "Oh, well, that was another one. Were they tired?" Okay. Now this is where things get really DEI, and we need to go do a little bit of reading on some CFRs here. So for the ATP,
what's a CFR?
CFR, U.S. Code of Federal Regulations. This is the actual law. I said we were going to read some law.
It's kind of small.
It's kind of okay. We can make it bigger. So they're talking about training requirements and like things you have to know. Oh, so this is the training for what we call an ATP, airline transport pilot. In order to fly a jet in a commercial jet in the United States, even as a first officer, you need to have one of these. So this applies to everyone. Okay, so we're talking about knowledge, training requirements, flight proficiency here. Just things that you have to have. And then let's see if I can find it. There is a minimum. Let's see, I found it once. See if I can find it again. Okay. It's actually up here. Okay. Airplane category rating. A person who is applying for an airline transport certificate with an airplane category and class rating must have at least 1,500 hours of total time as a pilot. And it goes into the various things you need to have. In order to get your ATP, you have to have 1,500 hours. But
Right.
wait. She only has
Why is it
14.
below?
Well, but it gets more interesting. She had already had 418 hours on the CRJ 900. How on God's green earth did she get into the flight deck of a CRJ with 1,100 hours?
No, 1,004 hours.
1,004. Oh, okay. Yes, Steve, you got me. My math was just a wee bit off. She was also she was on day now she was probably fatigued because she was on day 5 of a 5-day week, and this was her first flight of the day. Or no, this was her second flight of the day. She started in Cleveland, flew into Minneapolis, and then this flight departed Minneapolis, and she had 1 hour and 40 minutes in between. So she probably was tired. Okay. But I want to focus on this part here. I just said that you need to have 1,500 hours. But she had, as Steve rightly pointed out, 1,104.
1,004.
1,004. Well, it turns out that there is a way. Airplane category restricted privileges. A person may apply with a minimum of 1,000 hours if the person holds a bachelor's degree in an aviation major, completes 60 semester credit hours of aviation coursework, and then it goes on to describe the other actual training. So, because she held a college degree, he gets to fly on 1,000 hours of experience, on 1,000 hours of flight time. I'm not going to call it experience because hours do not equal experience, but.
Oh.
Well, she's good with paperwork.
Well, how many times have you been on Twitter and somebody's talking about credentialism and its relationship to DEI?
Oh, yeah, all the time. And it's also related to even seminary training and the people who are supposed to think. And now that's getting thrown back in their faces, which is kind of good. So,
well, she got into the right seat of a jet that can hold 70 some odd people because she has a bachelor's degree. Gentlemen, I present to you DEI in its most fatal form. They can kill you in job lots now.
and this doesn't
Our
matter.
credentials.
In its face, this doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It's just the fact that credentials over experience.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Credentials do not equal experience or competence.
Correct.
Okay. Now, she worked for an airline called Endeavor Air. I hate to do this to you guys because I'm actually really a big fan of airlines in general. But let's just go take a look at their careers page, shall we? This is today. This is active. What do you guys notice?
DEI.
Yeah. These are happy people. That's what I notice.
Steve. What else do you notice? Is that
they like women because they're
Okay.
promoting women to be able to do this. And yeah, minorities. It's a great place to navigate your career.
Now, to be fair, these pictures are obviously of ground staff, not pilots, but you can tell a lot about what the company is valuing by who they put on the front page of their hiring page.
I thought we're not supposed to judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, well, I'm judging the book by its fucking cover. Well, but am I though? Because there's a reason I just spent the past half an hour dragging people through this document. On paper and according to the regulations, this person was fully qualified to be in that seat. And at 420 hours or whatever, 418 hours in that type of aircraft, working, her base was Minneapolis. I guarantee you this was not the first time that she had seen adverse conditions, high winds, etc. She knew what to do.
It happens.
Yes. Now, it happens to men too. But one of the things that we know from studies that we're not allowed to talk about anymore is that women freeze at a much higher rate than men do.
Isn't there like a motor skills function that's faster in men than women
Yes, there is.
in general? Yes.
Men are also better at seeing movement out of their peripheral vision than men are. Men also have better night vision. Not a factor in this one, because obviously this was daytime. But Tacticus, you mentioned Rebecca Lobach. And you mentioned Rebecca Lobach and the helicopter crash. Yeah. Okay. That's nighttime crash. And that was done under the conditions themselves. The weather conditions were pristine. You could not ask for a better day to fly or anywhere. But her conditions were adverse because she was operating under night vision, which takes already difficult nighttime conditions and makes them much worse. The image is flat instead of dimensional. It's stuff like that. It's very likely that because there were two airplanes that were one was 6 miles behind the crash airplane, but the way the geometry, it would have looked like it was much closer. And so she very likely picked up on the wrong one. That's what they think happened. But that's easy to do in these adverse conditions. They also, based on what I've seen so far of that one, think that it was her instructor pilot that actually, because the helicopter had just started to turn away. They think it was the instructor pilot with her that actually did that turn. Shu, I agree with you. The question I have for you, and this is a serious question. This is a question to all of our audience. Yes, they should hire on merit. And if they did, the number of pilots would collapse. Because all of pilots right now everything about merit is determined by this document. This is subpart G. It's different for commercial ones, but for airline pilots, this right here, Title 14, Chapter 1, subpart D, Part 61, subpart G. That whole mess. If you can meet these requirements, you are considered qualified to handle people behind you. I have made arguments to the elsewise that we should not be doing this way at all. And I have had airline pilots get in my face and tell me that I'm wrong and that I just don't understand. And ours is the gold standard of experience, and there should be no other requirements placed on, I've met some pretty unhinged pilots. Pilots also, I hate to say this, trend liberal as a group. So there's a part of me that wonders if. Go ahead.
I've got a question to ask them to really set them off. Yeah, they did a lot of investigation here, some data. But where was this female pilot at in her menstrual cycle when the plane crashed?
They will not ask nor disclose that if they did.
Does the performance, behavior, thought process of women vary over the course of a month based on where they're at in their cycle? Do women get more emotional at certain times and less able to process information? I'm just asking because I'm just some dumb guy from North Dakota.
I can assure you that absolutely no studies have been done on female performance on certain times of the month, and likely never will. So I want.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, and I wanted to. I thought it would be interesting to do a detailed walkthrough of this document and build the case that I think is what happened. Now, this isn't I think. On the basis of the evidence presented so far by the TSBC, this screams to me, she froze. And people are going to say, oh, men freeze too. They do. At a far lower percentage rate than women do. I'm sorry
Yeah,
if
and the
people
Bible
don't like
talks
that.
about, yeah, this kind of shows that stuff in the Bible too about people, soldiers becoming like women free,
Yeah.
There's
So
something else here that hasn't been captured. There had to be a reason she froze. That's not listed here. Something out of the
oh shit.
ordinary caused her to freeze, if that in fact is what happened. And pretty much everything about the landing kind of seems like it was within somewhat normal parameters, not excessive in any way, not
Until
out of her experience until, the alarm went off.
right there. I have it highlighted on the screen.
Startling, right?
Sync
So-
rate, sync rate.
The sync rate triggered something, and then she possibly froze at that moment.
We don't have the final report. That'll take about 2 years. And I will be very curious to read it to see if they actually what they actually blame it on. This is Canada. So
Pilots train to land and hear that sync rate and then what to do when they hear it.
yes, that would be part
Do
of
they practice that in a simulator?
Yes, that would be a mandatory part of her training, both primary and it would be considered. So obviously, as she's going up to the CRJ, she's going to get a ton of training in all the procedures and whatnot for that aircraft. And then every, want to say 6 to 9 months, it depends on a number of different rules. She's going to go back in for recurrent training. That training tends to focus entirely on emergency situations, not how to fly the aircraft. They kind of assume you can at that point. So sync rates are considered mandatory training. It's a critical alert on what we call short final. So I'll guarantee that she had that at some point in her training history, at least once, if not more than once.
So the training anticipates people can get jarred and startled when this alarm goes off. And so we better train them on this so they don't freeze, because they understand. Someone who put together the training says, yeah, okay, we want them experienced with this, so when the alarm happens, they know what to do and they don't freeze.
Yes. Some of the ways that we train pilots today are based on outdated methodologies. The military actually does a much better job of it in general. And I say that knowing that we have to go talk, that we have to say, okay, yeah, and there's Rebecca Lobach over here who just kind of screwed up. But the military actually, particularly special forces dudes, it is very difficult to get somebody to run towards the sound of gunfire. It's even more difficult to get somebody to run through a door that they know gunfire is going to be coming out of. And the special forces dudes have come up with training that can convince a normal human being to do that, to work through every single possible startle reflex, every single possible what's the term? Just that self-preservation drive that humans have. The special forces guys have figured all this out. But the problem is, and I have actually spent some time working out what a pilot should actually go through to be allowed in the flight deck of a plane. Because I can take a pilot with 500 hours of solid training, wall to wall, and in what they get trained in, and they will be far safer on the flight deck than this lady was at nearly 1,500 hours. Hours don't matter. What's your skill set? What situations have you been put in and put through? That's what matters. But the problem is, if we put women through that, most women would not be able to handle it. Hell, most men would not be able to handle it. And that's why I was asking, are you willing to suffer the consequences of losing a significant portion of your pilots?
So are you implying that this training that you would put them through is stressful?
Extremely so, physically and mentally.
And therefore, you seem to also be implying that men are more capable at handling stressful situations than women. A lot of men would wash out, but a much greater percentage of women would wash out.
Correct. And women already only make up about 6 to 8% of pilots. And so with the DEI charge, we have to up our numbers. There is an extreme push throughout the system to get women in, because so few women will select for this career as it is. And so
if you're training this 500-hour theoretical training program, what percentage of men who are pilots or learning to be pilots, what percentage of men would wash out, fail that?
Easily 75.
75%. Wow. Which probably means that over 95% of women would wash out.
Something like that. There are women who could do this. If you guys...
Obviously, yeah, I fully agree.
There's a famous name, Patty Wagstaff. She's an aerobatic pilot. I already know she can do all of this because I've seen her do it at air shows. Right? That, like, she can handle the physical and the mental. She does it on display at air shows around the country. There are not many Patty Wagstaffs available to choose from for your DEI programs.
This reminds me of something about Bowen we talked about, but that might be something else.
Are you
You have
reading
that
my
lined up?
tabs here?
No, we talked about this half a year ago, briefly.
Yeah, well, the narrative continues. So
Mm.
I think I've made my point here specifically, but so we've kind of been talking about the equity part of DEI, right? We've all women are always equal in every respect to men, right? And
So, so these airplane dudes, the guys who make it, do they think about airplanes all the time? Do they just nerd out about airplanes? Are they obsessive about
Yes.
learning about airplanes? Do they talk about it all the time? Is it like, hey, buddy, get a life? It's not all about
Yeah.
airplanes. Now,
Thanks, Nick.
do female pilots nerd out about airplanes too?
I have actually talked to a few who have. There are a few.
But is that's kind of the exception?
Oh, yes.
I would say when men do a job, they learn everything about it and they can rattle off facts and they can talk about what they do for hours, bore the tears out of anybody who's not into it. Talk to a truck driver. He'll talk to you for hours about the engines and the, 13 speed, 10 speed, these automatic trains. He'll just go on and on and on about, and then stories about what he did. Women, it's a job. They don't just nerd out about it. They don't have the passion that shows up in living, breathing, thinking about their occupation the way a man does. That's my observation.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, Steve. At my flight school, I was one of the fastest pilots through the program that had ever been through their program when I was getting my licenses. And I know this seems morbid, but you guys are Shu actually brought it up, air disasters. There's a TV show that's been called either Mayday or Air Crash Investigations. I watched every one of those while I was in flight school. And then once I had watched them, I would actually go I would pull up the NTSB docket on that crash and go read what actually happened. By the way, Air Crash Investigations is a highly, thanks, right? Thanks, Nick.
We're all nerds here. It's okay.
But that's me. It wasn't good enough for me to say, oh, I know how to fly an airplane. I wanted to go learn what mistakes people made and then try to teach myself how to not make them, which meant I did strange things as a student that people looked at me and they go, why the hell would you ever do that? Well, I can tell you exactly how much ice a 182 can carry on its wings, and it's way more than you think it is. I don't ever want to do that again, but I know I can if I have to. Right. It's stuff like that.
So, in your studying, did you determine that the disaster happened about 1 to 5 seconds before the fire?
Well, you see, that's the thing is when I first saw this video, the video that I showed, I knew immediately where the accident happened. I was just watching the video going, I was literally thinking to myself, sink rate, sink rate, sink rate. And the moment I started thinking, it's like, okay, yeah, that's where the actual accident happened.
Oh. So the accident happens before the fire.
Yes, actually, it does.
Cause and effect.
Yeah, exactly, Nick. The cause of this accident is sink rate, and the document, I did not show this to you guys, but the document spends an enormous amount of time talking about how the metallurgy of how the airplane landing on its main landing gear with that bank angle and that sideways motion on the airplane, basically tore the landing gear off the plane. And they spend a ton of time talking about that. It's like, okay, that's all great. That ain't where the accident happened. That's just happens to be that's actually where the accident ended. The accident started when the sink rate went off. Up until the sink rate goes off, things are okay. Things are landable. That sink rate means that the designers of the aircraft have determined that you are descending too fast for the design of that airplane. That's what that means. Steve, you're a mechanical engineer. What happens when you exceed the design parameters of a mechanical system?
Well, then you're just operating in the safety factor. Now,
okay.
Don't exceed the safety factor, because then, yeah, things don't work. And the safety factor is there because even if you try and operate it within it, sometimes things go a little bit above. Okay, you're not going to operate on the ragged edge.
I hope not. As a passenger, I hope not.
For instance, I'm a pipeline guy. You can operate a pipeline at 72% of specified minimum yield strength. Okay, 72% of its ultimate carrying capacity. So, okay, you're not going to 100%. What if you went to 100%? Well, you know what? I pressure tested some pipelines up to 105%. And did they blow up? Not usually. Why does that work? Because it specified minimum yield strength. It says that's the minimum strength of that steel in the pipe. It has a yield strength. Actually, the pipe is actually like 10% stronger than that. 15%, maybe. So, I mean, theoretically, you got a couple levels of safety factors in there. You have a known safety factor and an unknown safety factor. I'll guarantee you, these airplanes have the same thing.
Yep.
The safety a safe level, and then up to the yield strength of the materials, but the materials are actually stronger than that. So when it fails, you were typically way the hell over what that airplane was designed to do. Because engineers, a prudent engineer keeps, he doesn't want his shit to fail. He doesn't want to be called out and says, gee, your design failed. Oh, nope, that's a bad day for an engineer. Because lives are on the line.
Mm-hmm.
His pride is on the line.
Hopefully. Some of these engineers, I wonder. But yeah, it's like if you're here sink rate, that's the airplane telling you that you're exceeding its design limitations. And oh, hey, look, we have video evidence that they exceeded that airplane's design limitations, which is why the emergency
evidence of correction.
Yeah, exactly. We have evidence that's what really blows my mind. No evidence of correction in this whole thing.
Just shit getting worse. In fact, shit getting worse.
Yeah, and no correction. And
Yeah.
of course, you're going to exceed your design limits. That's why I was saying it doesn't matter if it takes 3 to 5 seconds for the engine to start producing thrust. That thrust will, by physics, slow the rate of descent, which will reduce the load on the main landing gear, which might and likely would be, given the amount of time, enough to prevent a landing gear collapse. Now, yes, it probably would have still smacked the runway pretty hard. And yes, they probably would have had to call operations to bring an inspector out and check everything to make sure that's still okay. Boo-hoo, too bad. Right? Everyone gets to walk away from an airplane that doesn't flip over and light itself on fire. Right? Exactly. So that's one thing that I wanted to bring up. And it's a key point. Shu, you're 1 out of 1,000. Shu, you're an optimist. Love you, brother, but you're an optimist. Probably more like 1 in 10,000. And the thing is, I have met some. When women do select for aviation, they tend to be a little strange just by fact of them having selected for it. Now, I was in flight school, 15, 20 years ago. So, and I have evidence. I got into it still to this day pisses me off so bad. I want to get her blackballed. But there was an ex user who was in some of the discussions around this, and she was so DEI that it was hysterical. And it turns out she was actually an OF girl too. So I was just
good night.
Well, here's the thing about OF. I don't think she realized it, but if her airline ever found out she had worked OF, she would have been blackballed from the industry. And so I was just like, is there some way I can email all of the airline HR departments and say, never hire this person? She's an OF girl, and just like totally skunk her career. But she was prancing around, telling everyone how women, men ain't shit. Women are better pilots, and in the threads underneath this accident. So yeah, Shu, maybe 20 years ago, it would have been 1 out of 1,000, but anymore, I think you're kind of an optimist. So, but so we spent about an hour on equity. Does anyone want to do some diversity now? Because I got diversity too. Oh, this will make you guys just really want to get on a plane. Because we're keeping with aviation themes. Here we go.
Doubles down.
Well, this is from a website that is very pro-American worker. So they have their bias, but their bias is not without merit. Because
didn't we talk about Boeing and their manufacturing and DEI already?
Yes,
is that included here?
No, this is something else. This is actually different. So the 346 dead and 2 crashes are referring to the MAX, the 737 MAX crashes, the MCAS. Yeah. What we were talking about was the door plug blowout on Alaska.
Okay.
So this is different. I can't read the whole article because I don't subscribe to Bloomberg, but this is the article that they're referring to. This is an actual sourced article from Bloomberg. The article goes on to say, and I lost it. I had it a while ago. Basically, so if you guys see these screens right here, they're kind of hard to see, and I can't.
I see them. There's 4 of them there.
Yeah, there's 4 of them here. Yeah, kind of hard to see. Those are the avionics. And what Boeing was doing was Boeing doesn't actually make the avionics. A company called Honeywell does. And Honeywell was outsourcing all of their software design and testing to a lab in Chennai, India. And one of the key factors of the MCAS crashes is that there was supposed to be a warning displayed about the MCAS system failing that was never appropriately wired up to the displays by the
Oh crap.
Indian programmers. It's not the only thing that went wrong there, but if you, because the other thing that happened here is that American Airlines, and I'm talking about the actual airline, had a number of incidents with the MCAS thing wigging out, and their pilots just corrected for it because they were properly trained. So there's a huge pilot training component to this, but the pilots who did fail were missing an alert that would have told them what was going on. That might have helped. We don't know if it would help, but it might have helped. So here's your diversity in action, guys. And if you think this is just Boeing, I have bad news for you. Boeing and Airbus both use the same avionics manufacturers. So and now they're actually just looking for here we go. Airbus plans to hire 1,000 people in India.
Highly skilled? Are they really highly skilled?
Well, that is the question now, isn't it? Of course, this is from the Seattle Times, so it's Boeing heavy because Boeing is out of Seattle area. And of course, we have to take they have to, being the Seattle area, they have to take their dig at Airbus first because hometown crowd, all that. Okay. So
Shu's comment is
Shu, actually, yeah, pretty much.
We've mentioned out that a few times.
Yeah, Idiocracy is not a comedy; it's a future history. So here's some diversity for you. Okay, I'm sure you guys are just now dying to go get on Boeing jets, or Airbus jets, because Indian programmers are the best in the world, according to themselves. Okay, so how about we do some diversity and equity? This one came across my desk here late last week. You guys know the name Brooke Rollins?
Yeah, I can barely see that. I have to zoom in a bit. There you go.
We're not going to listen to it. This is just an interview she's doing on Fox Business. Brooke Rollins is the Secretary of Agriculture for the current Trump administration. This interview was what? Oh, earlier today. Okay. So relevant. There has been this on again, off again. We are going to give amnesty to illegal immigrants working in the farms and hotels industries. This popped up. I find it fascinating that this immigration stuff always seems to pop up on holidays. So this amnesty thing originally popped up late July 3rd, early July 4th, depending on where you are. And of course, it was after the markets had closed. Everyone's leaving town for the holiday. Of course, July 4th. Then Trump came out and kind of walked it back yesterday. But what he said was, we're not giving them amnesty. We're just not going to enforce. We're just going to focus our efforts elsewhere first. And now, of course, you have Brooke Rollins back here pushing amnesty on Fox Business again. So now I have
we hate our own people.
We do, but now we have equity pushing diversity out of the Trump administration.
This is just stupid. Because for decades, the U.S. has had a program to bring in temporary foreign workers.
H-2A.
as farm workers for a period of time to handle the harvest. They come in, okay, come in from Mexico. And I don't know anything about it, although, but I know that the U.S. has used Mexicans for farm labor, and they've been here legally, and they just come, work, and go home. And then next year they come, work, go home. Why can't we do that? It's all legal. The system's been set up to do that.
And there's no pathway to citizenship in the H-2A like there is with the H-1B. So H-1B is called a dual intent visa. It's a non-immigrant visa, but you can still apply for immigrant status. That's H-1B. H-2A does not have any of those features. You come, you do your work, makes your money, you go home. Okay? That's H-2A. Steve, as you noticed, we have that. So why are we pushing amnesty? Well, Charlie Kirk, who I'm not a huge fan of, but he has a theory. He thinks this has everything to do with the 1986 Immigration and Reform and Control Act, better known as the Reagan Amnesty.
Okay.
Okay.
And he actually does a really good teardown of what it was supposed to be, what it actually turned into. And by the way, that 1986 bill was about agriculture. I suspect, as many others on Twitter do, that over the next 6 months, although remember, we have a harvest coming up. That's what, September and October. I suspect that over summer, we're going to see a big push to say, well, if we don't give these people amnesty, your food prices are going to go up and food will be left rotting in the fields. How do I know that?
Well,
Well,
what was that other term? Dream something.
DACA.
Okay, so children of these illegal immigrants who are, well, I guess they wouldn't have birthright citizenship because otherwise they'd be an American citizen. They were here, probably came over when they were young and were fully encultured in the U.S., spoke English and all that. We're technically not U.S. citizens, but we extended citizenship to them because they were DACA, right? What's DACA stand for? Do you remember?
I do not remember what it stands for.
Okay. But yeah, that's a different thing than this. The Reagan amnesty was different than DACA, right?
Correct. So the Reagan amnesty was specifically about agriculture workers. And the idea is that we were going to create this pool. I think it was 3 million at the time. We were going to create this pool of workers to work the fields. And we were going to say, well, you just come here, we'll give you amnesty. We'll give you oh, by the way, Chuck Schumer, he introduced an amendment that gave a free path to citizenship for any person in America illegally who had recently spent at least 90 days working in agriculture. You don't think Schumer would ever try that again, do you? No. Really? And I verified Charlie Kirk's narrative here with my dad, who lived through this and was telling people not to do this. How did it turn out? Well, in the end, it wasn't a few 100,000 people who got amnesty. It was 3 million. Doubtless, some of them were never agricultural workers at all or weren't covered by the bill's provisions. But once the path to amnesty and citizenship was there, it was easy to exploit. Those 3 million amnesties in turn led to millions of additional people coming to the U.S. via family reunification. one amnestied worker, later bringing his wife, his children, his parents, his brother, and so on. So,
Well, if you're not documented, if you're an undocumented illegal immigrant, all of a sudden you just have to bring some documentation to somebody and say, yeah, I work for him, I'm guessing. It sounds like a really easy thing to exploit.
no, Nick, don't notice the obvious flaw.
I want to point out something, not to defend this, but just a factor. What we're talking about here is Mexicans. Mexicans are North American. There is a big Mexican culture in the U.S. Mexicans are culturally Christian, Catholics. We have a Catholic, Mexican, Hispanic population here. They could come in, and actually did, kind of fit in to our culture. And Hispanics have really become mainstream. There hasn't been a problem with a cultural, I mean, there is a cultural clash. Yeah,
Steve,
I'm not arguing that it's
got
not.
a question for you,
But
Steve.
it's much less than the cultural clash of bringing in Muslim Somalis here. Because I tell you, the U.S.
Yeah.
black population does not like the black Somalis. They do not integrate that well. Okay,
Steve,
now go ahead.
so of all the various ethnic groups in the United States, which group is the most likely to be anti-immigration?
I would say the Hispanics.
Second generation Hispanics are incredibly anti-immigration, or as the libs would say, racist. Oh, they know exactly what is going on, and they want nothing to do with it. It's part of the reason that Hispanic citizens broke so hard for Trump in the last election, and it's part of the reason that
and you know those
Okay,
second
and
generation
now,
Hispanics are no longer farm workers.
true.
They moved up just like the Irish. Second
Yep.
generation Irish were not dumbass laborers. The Italians, second generation Italians, were not dumbass wops. They moved up. They mainstreamed. They made great economic strides. The Mexicans, Hispanics, did the exact same thing. I mean, they're
Yeah.
really pretty decent workers, and I've worked with several. I mean, they're great guys.
So here's the other thing. You know, we hear a lot about border security. There was border security provisions in that 1986 bill. It was the first federal law to impose penalties for hiring illegal immigrants. We didn't have any penalties up until 1986. I didn't even know that. I thought their penalties went back way further than that, but nope. Those laws still exist. We just choose not to enforce them. Employers ignore them and don't face consequences.
rules for thee, but not for me.
Yeah. And by the late 90s, illegal immigration was at higher levels than ever before. Whenever you hear amnesty, the only thing you should think is it will be bigger, and any provisions that they give you, security provision, they intend on ignoring those. And how do we know that? Because they did it before.
Hey, but if we outlawed this, how would the people in Texas, Arizona, California get their shrubs trimmed and their lawns mowed?
Funny you mentioned that. So there was a big ice raid at a town so they did it was a meat packing plant. This is a couple weeks ago.
Iowa?
It might have been. I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was Midwest.
There's a bunch of them in Iowa.
Yeah, okay. Well, it was definitely Midwest. It was a small town. Meat Packer, of course, is the biggest employer. And Okay, so all their illegals got they got deported, taken away. Hundreds of them, a couple hundred, I think. And so the meatpacking plant, they have a problem solved. They need employees, and they need them now. They don't. Their plant's shut down. So they go to the local community. And they go to the high schools. Boom. They were refilled and up and running a week later. Do not ever believe the propaganda that American citizens, and particularly American teenagers, do not want these jobs. Yeah, they might not want those jobs forever. Yeah, it might be it might be a job for your first 2 years of college. And yes, you're gonna have to pay more. That was one of the other things that came out of this, is they actually had to pay more than they had to pay the illegals. Yes, it's going to cost. Go ahead, Nick.
It may cost you more, but these people live here, so they have more invested in their communities, more invested in giving a proper product to those communities because they have connections here.
Well, there's another point I want to make, Nick, along this vein. They cost the company more. They cost the government less. Because you see, when illegal comes here, they don't get health insurance. They don't get company provided health insurance. Whenever an illegal has a problem, they have to go to an emergency room. And because emergency rooms are paid for by the government, unless you have insurance. Well, they don't have insurance, but by law, an emergency room cannot turn away somebody with even an illness. Certainly not a broken bone or something like that. They must take care of you by law. And if no one else can pay for it, they charge Medicaid, i.e. the government. Unless you have insurance like most Americans do who actually work for companies. Okay, those people don't. So, everyone's, what illegal immigration is welfare for corporates. It's what it is. Because the corporates don't have to pay the cost of they don't have to pay the insurance costs. Remember, there's other insurance costs too. So at a meatpacking plant, you have an unusually high amount of dismemberments. It's the nature of working around sharp, cutty object thingies, right? That means that the business's insurance costs are going to be higher unless you hire illegals who cannot be insured. And when their hand gets cut off, they just go home. Okay. So the cost of illegal immigration is not borne by, in the name of cheap food, society must pay for incredibly expensive healthcare for free. But hey, I'm just talking about diversity. Don't you want this diversity, guys? Isn't diversity our strength? No. Diversity of
people it's diversity, but these are criminals. They entered the country illegally. It is a crime. They are foreign invaders.
Yeah, exactly.
What makes you think they want to just abide by whatever laws, except when they don't have to?
Well, that's what you're telling them. They can pick and choose which laws they get to abide by. And after you give them amnesty, they tend to keep on doing that. Oh, illegal immigrants, huge beneficiaries of food stamps as well. The cost of illegal immigration is not borne by the businesses; it's borne by the people, and that's why we're seeing the backlash against it. It's why deportations are Trump's. It does not. It was kind of hysterical. CNN put up this chart of all the various polling agencies, like MSNBC and ABC. They all have their polling agencies, and every single one of them over half the country's in favor of deportations. It's like Trump's most popular possible thing that he's ever done.
Hey, Plutarch.
Hmm.
Do you remember the show that I led, The Problem is Inequality?
I do.
Where I highlighted this British trader, economist, Gary Stevenson.
Yep.
And he talked about inequality of wealth as a problem. But he said, yes, what the politicians in the UK, and then he predicted Trump will play to his base, but we're going to do something about illegal immigration. But he's going to talk that, but then actually not do anything to appease the wealthy people because they're making money on it. You talk tough and you do nothing. What's happening? What's happening right now?
Oh,
Not
Epstein
much.
fine. Epstein fine, whatever. Oh, nothing.
Talk tough. Really do nothing. And who was it? Was it Eric Prince who said, yeah, give me $50 billion and
Yep.
I'll round them up and deport them all?
Yes. That was, he said 25, but yes.
20, whatever it was. And, maybe that was too much money. I don't know. That's not the point.
Right.
The point is, yeah, we're not deporting them. And I did a quick calculation. If there's 30 million, and let's say you up the deportations to 10,000 a month, it's only 100,000 a year, and you'd never get the problem handled. You'd have to deport like 100,000 a month, and you'd be deporting 1.2 million a year. Shit, you're still not going to get the problem solved before I'm dead.
That's how you get the problem
That's
solved.
how
Put a
big the
bounty
problem
on
is.
every
But yet,
Hey, let the American people collect bounties on every illegal immigrant they turn in.
yeah, they're going to pay lip service and they're going to do nothing. Gary Stevenson from Gary's Economics is right. I agree with him.
Yeah. So I did some math. If we use that 25 billion number, Eric Prince is saying that he could deport them all for $833 per character. Believe it or not, it's actually probably a pretty reasonable number. Now, they're not going to get coddled, first class seats out of the country. They'll be stuck on whatever plane he can get cheap. Or bust out. Busing is cheap.
Why do we care how they get out? Just get them out.
Right.
But we owe them nothing.
Nick, you
we owe them
need
nothing.
To be,
I don't
Nick,
care.
You need to be gentle.
No. I don't care.
Well, but I think that, Steve, what you're talking about here, I think they're trying it. And I think that's what this, this was earlier today, right? Now, Brooke Rollins is rapidly setting herself up as the poster child of diversity and equity. But there's more. There's more. Oh, I have more.
Oh, that's the one I've been
no, I
asked around the
we'll get to that one.
No, okay.
This is Microsoft. Big tech.
Oh, 6,000 H-1B requests. Okay.
This is legal immigration now, you hear.
Right.
And so this number is actually low. It's the actual number is now up to 17,000 this year, I think. But that's across all. I think she might just be talking about Washington. 17,000 across the entire company. Oh yeah, well, okay, there we go. 14,000 total foreign labor requests this year. 82% below market wage. And Microsoft's very proud of this number. So Microsoft, in their most recent 10K, which I don't have up, but also published in the Times of India, Satya Nadella comes out and says, "Oh yeah, we are going to freeze hire. Microsoft is going to freeze hiring everywhere in the world except India." And in India, we're going to hire 10 million Indians. We need all the Indians we can get. We're going to spend $3 billion building new, not headquarters, new offices we're going to train these 10 million people all to work with AI.
Okay, this 82% below market wage. When they say it that way, I know how to do percentages, but it's all in the wording in how it's phrased. So let's say 82%. I can do 80% in my head pretty easily. Let's call it 80%. So we saw that number previously of, well, we'll just call it $10 an hour is what they're going to pay these people.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, does that mean they're making 20% of what a U.S. worker would? So a U.S. worker's wage would be $50. Word is wage, not what the company what it costs the company to employ that person. Because
Correct.
then you add healthcare and all that stuff on top of that. Yeah, you're getting up to 80, 90, $100 an hour. Because you're going to pay Social Security, that portion. You're going to have to pay, and
I need to stop you right
have
there.
to pay insurance and all that on the U.S. worker, right?
Oh, on the U.S. worker, yes.
On the U.S. worker. So you're comparing $100 an hour, all in, to hiring somebody at $10 an hour. Yeah, you're still going to have to pay some of those costs, but it's on a much lower basis. So, yeah, it's going to cost them $20 to employ that person. The company is saving such a massive amount of money. You know what? I'm glad next time I have to up my subscription to Microsoft 365, the price is coming down. Shit. I'm like, it's going to be down by 70, 80%. Wow.
Oh God, I wish.
No.
Wait,
It will work.
no,
it won't work.
don't
It'll
pocket
work.
that.
You'll have more problems, and it'll cost you more.
Oh yeah. So as far as the waging goes, H-1Bs do not they do not have to pay Social Security taxes at all, which means that for those of you viewers who are not in private small business and do not know how this works, you pay a tax to Social Security. You see it as FICA on your pay stub. Okay. The business also pays that same amount that you saw on your pay stub. So take whatever it was and double it. The business does not report to you that they paid that Social Security tax, but they did. Okay. So if your FICA was $400, then your employer is paying an additional $400 into FICA on top of that. If you hire an H-1B, the FICA withholding for H-1Bs is 0, so the corporate pays 0. H-1Bs are also a tax program. Somebody told up it's an H-1B costs 15% less in taxes as well, in addition to being cheaper. So the average H-1B, the average salary at Microsoft, big tech salary, I don't know the average salary at Microsoft per se, but in the Bay Area, the average salary was about 200,000, so 180 to 200,000, depending on where you ended up. Okay. The average H-1B in the Bay Area will make about 80. Okay. But the cost to the company is probably close. So your cost to the company as an American worker is probably, so 200,000 in wages, probably another easy 150 in total, another 150 in benefits packages above that, because it's not, H-1Bs also don't get 401ks, for example. So your company would have to do a 401k match for you. They'll have to do your insurance for you. H-1Bs, I think they are required to get health insurance, but it doesn't, I don't think it has to meet the requirements that that health insurance for American does. So my understanding is they can get very cheap health insurance. And there's ways for them to get around that too, even having to get it all. So what so you might cost your employer $350,000, but you probably cost, the H-1B probably costs your employer $100,000. It's probably how it all works out.
But we have Trump in there. He's imposed those tariffs to bring those manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. What he hasn't said is he's going to bring in the foreign workers to staff those manufacturing jobs in the U.S.
Well, Steve, haven't you
yeah, it's
heard?
happening.
American teenagers don't want to do those jobs. American teenagers want to sit at home and play video games all day. Haven't you heard?
Yeah, well, they'll still do the jobs if you pay them.
Oh, you mean, but you have to pay them like Americans. Oh,
yeah.
The whole sitting at home playing video games, that was Speaker of the House Mike Johnson a couple months ago. But the funny thing is every time something happens like that ICE raid, you find out that Americans actually have no problem working these jobs. Oh, sorry, Andrew. Yes, Satya Nadella is in fact Indian. I don't know what caste offhand. So yeah, Tacticus, for whatever good the rupees are. Yeah, talk about a currency that's in crisis. Well, see, that's the other thing. Here's another cost that legal immigration has to the U.S. economy. Last year, the United States sent $134 billion pre-tax dollars to India. We're on track to do $150 billion this year.
Do we just hate our own people?
Well, we don't hate the women, mostly.
Who is we?
Oh, we can't have a national identity. That means we're somehow racist.
Okay, there is no we here, Nick. There are the owners of the businesses and the rest of us. Call them the elite, the 1%, the 5%, the 10%. Who
the
owns
boomers?
Stock? The boomers, and not all boomers. Well, maybe all boomers are kind of naive about this, but okay. Do you want to earn less money and help out fellow Americans to have jobs and a good future for this country. Or, but your income would go down by 50% initially for 10 years until you can get the throttle's wide open, and then you'll be better off. But you're going to lose half your income for the next 10 years. Or do you want to have these illegals come in and farm money out or farm work out to India so you can have your retirement and the income stream now? What do you choose?
Well, Steve,
What are they going to choose?
we already know what they're going to choose. You were talking about money and income. For boomers, it's really not about income anymore. Most of them are retired. It is about asset prices. And this chart here is a chart of the biggest asset price category in the country. And this chart is damning in the extreme. So the baby boomers were finished being born in 1980, 81, depending on where you choose to cut it, somewhere in there.
61, you mean?
Sorry, yes, 61. They turned 20 the last of them turned 20 in 81. And when do most people buy their first house? They buy their first house 24, 25 years old, which is why this chart uses 1985 as its epoch, as its start point. Okay. The average baby boomer entering the economy was making $23,000 a year. Okay, cool. Got it. The house that they were going to buy cost about, eyeballing it, I want to say about 3.5 times that. Three and a third. So it'll be somewhere in there, right? 83,000.
Yep.
3.5 times.
Cappy has a thing. Cappy, he talks about it. He has his boomer voice, the beginning of some of his episodes. He talks about where he was waiting tables and working a paper route, and he saved up enough money for his first house.
Yeah, I've heard it all
If
from the
I could
boomers
do it,
too.
you can do it too. Just pick yourself up by your bootstraps.
Okay. In 2022, median household income for millennials, it's roughly tripled, okay? Roughly. So $74,500 a year. Okay. Median home price in that same time has gone up 5x.
Yeah.
The millennials will not be buying anybody's house at $470,000. They will be buying houses. Let's see, do the math. I actually did this math once. It's about $150,000 is about where the millennials can actually start to afford.
So is this real? I'll tell you it is. I bought my first house in 1987. Okay, I was an engineer in the oil and gas business, making 30 grand a year. I bought a brick duplex in Duluth for $30,000. The house was 22 feet wide. The lot was 25 feet wide. It was a duplex. It needed some work. Wasn't in the best area of town, but it wasn't bad. 1 times my income, but then I had a renter that basically paid the mortgage. Yeah, it was like that. Now, you can't do that today. And I was making way above average for, a guy my age. An engineer can now come out of school making and take a job. Let's say he's very fortunate, 100 grand.
Wow.
No fucking way anywhere he can find a house equivalent to what I got for 100, 110, 120 grand. It's not there. The world has changed that much. Yeah, when the boomers say, "Well, if I could do it, you can do it." Bullshit. They're talking out of their ass. They have no idea how difficult it is now. It's not like when they were young.
Okay, I've been in the background pulling this chart up. This is a chart of the federal funds rate since 1985. Does anyone notice a general trend on this chart? Actually, I'm going to make it small.
We're probably about to hit a bust.
Well, amongst other things. So that data was 2022. So we will restrict it to. I need to make it. We'll make it the 1st of January on 2020. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, overall trend is down. There are some blips up, but just connect the peaks. It's pretty much a straight line. Connect the troughs. Pretty much a straight line. They're in a channel, but it's a downward channel.
Okay. So one of the things, this is a mathematical rule of finance. As bond interest rates come down, bond prices go up. I won't bother trying to explain all the math for now. Just that's the math. Okay. Interest rates down, prices up. What did I just say there? Because here's the deal. Starting in, what was it, the early 1970s, or sorry, the late 1970s, we got the 30-year bond. We also got the 30-year treasury around the same time. Could those two things possibly be related? The boomers voted themselves lower interest rates and then told themselves they were geniuses. That's what this chart is.
What? Are you saying boomers are not geniuses?
No, they just figured out how to hack interest rates. If the interest rate on as a finance guy, you see your house as a place to live, etc. Okay. I view houses in two buckets. Do you own the house outright? Yes or no? If you do, we can have a different conversation. If you do not, I do not see your house as a home. I see your house as a mortgage bond, specifically a mortgage bond with a 30-year or a 15-year duration. So if the interest rate on your house goes down, what must then happen to your price?
Well, it goes up because now I can sell it. And if I sold it, a person can, let's say they can afford a $2,000 a month mortgage payment.
Mm-hmm.
If the interest rate is really low, and for the first year, let's say, it only takes $500 of that mortgage payment to pay the interest.
Mm-hmm.
That $1,500 goes to the principal.
Yep.
If, on the other hand, interest rates were much higher and $1,200 went to the interest payment, only $800 would be paid to the principal, which means they still can't afford more. So I would have to lower my selling price to make it fit the principal payment they can afford, because the interest comes first. So as the interest rate comes down, the amount of interest people have to pay on the debt also drops, which means there's more money there for them to pay a higher equity cost. I am such a smart guy for buying that house. It goes up by 10% per year. I'm a smart boomer. Look how much money I made in my house.
So what you don't really have real market prices. You have mortgage market prices on houses.
Correct. We no longer buy a house, we buy a payment. That's actually a saying you'll hear in the finance industry. You don't buy the
So it
house, you buy the payment.
overinflates the housing market because you've allowed these 30-year mortgages and low interest rates.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah. So Andrew's asking, when did Nixon detach the dollar from gold? I can give a long explanation about why that doesn't matter, but that was done in 1971. And then the Great Inflation actually happens afterwards. But it was not the Great Inflation was going to happen regardless because the boomers were coming into the market. The first boomer was born in 1946, which means that in 1970, in 1971, they would have been 15 years old. And they, by the time you get to 1975, which is when the inflation really takes off, they're 20 years old. There's a lot of them. They have no jobs sorry, there's a lot of them. They all go get jobs. They have no stuff. They have no cars, no houses, no nothing. And so they go out and they get loans. And remember, it is not the Federal Reserve only prints about 20% of the money. The commercial banking system prints about 80% of the rest. And so every time a boomer got a loan for their house, they were inflating the money supply. Every time they bought a car on credit, they were inflating the money supply. So the Great Inflation really is a demographic effect, not a monetary policy effect. And it's fascinating. You can actually chart the expansion of the working age population almost 1-to-1 with the inflation. So
let me clarify that a little bit. Commercial or your local bank does not print money, but it absolutely does create money.
That's a good way to say it.
You
Yeah.
have to believe me on that. I can explain it to you, but let's not go there right now. Most of the money that's created is actually created by the average commercial bank. Even your local hometown bank creates money.
Yep. Well, here's a fun one for you guys. Every time you swipe a credit card, not that I think our audience has a lot of credit cards, but every time you swipe a credit card, you are creating money. Your bank is handing you money that did not exist before.
Unless you use a debit card, then you're not creating money.
That's true. But I said credit card. I didn't say debit card.
Yeah. I know.
Andrew, correct. Double income family from the 70s onwards. The double incomes were required. There were so many boomers that they drove the cost of labor down. A large part of the reason you see that crook so there's that famous chart, the average price of house versus average wage or something. And there's that crook in the early 1970s. A large part of that is because boomers flooded the job market, and their answer to flooding the job market was, okay, wifey's going to go get a job too. And that worked for them, but it drove up what they could afford. Exactly. So when two people have incomes, it drives up what they can afford. And so, I mean, demographics really is destiny. And it's why we talk about it so much on this channel. Because I really, we can talk monetary policy and it's really wonky and nerdy stuff. But the reality is that the boomers caused the Great Inflation. It's also why I am not worried about inflation at all for the next 20 years. Because go look at what happened to Japan. Major demographic bust, historic deflation. Because it turns out that inflation is actually mostly a measure of your population expansion. We're not talking about hyperinflation, Weimar Germany. That is a different thing. I'm talking about sort of a more natural inflation rates. And 20% is not hyperinflation.
I have a question to bring this back to our theme, DEI. In general, I think men don't like DEI. In general, I think a lot of women support DEI because they think it benefits them. So, Plutarch, does DEI benefit women? Really, truly?
Well, look, Steve, we have women flying airplanes now. That's a good thing, right? Right?
Maybe for the individual woman.
Okay. But we also explained how maybe women aren't the best suited to that particular high stress task. Okay.
Right.
Immigration.
Now, maybe even that woman is not content doing that.
Yeah,
She'd
yeah.
actually be more content had she not that job. But let's assume she is content and DEI is going on. Will she have to compete against these inclusive people that might displace her job in the future?
Oh, of course. Well, and even going back to the 1970s discussion, what we brought all these women into the workforce, and what was the sum total? It drove down wages per person, and it drove up the cost of things. Oh yeah, that was great for women. How many women do you see on TikTok complaining about how they don't have any money? Their work now, part of it is these women are absolutely horrible at budgeting. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that. But now women, they've been told that they have to go out and work, and diversity and inclusion makes sure that they get an adult daycare job where they really don't have to work that hard compared to a man. And they'll get 6 figures for putting together fucking PowerPoint presentations. Okay. But then these women lose their job, just like a man would in a RIF, right? A reduction in force, a layoff. Okay. And then what do? They go on TikTok crying about how, they lost their job. They can't afford anything. And what do they say? Oh, now I need a man.
Oh, like 2009, 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
Has the overall standard of living for women increased with their equality and opportunity and jobs and all that? Are they living a higher standard? Is their standard of living higher now than when they were chained to a kitchen stove?
Well, Steve, we need to ask the question, what standard of living are we talking about here? Because there's a standard of living where you can live as a single woman on your own without a man, and you can be strong and independent, but you have to take care of everything. Or you can have the standard of living where the guy takes care of the important stuff. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, can I talk about their standard of living? So the modern woman's standard of living is nails done, expensive facial, right? Botox injections, getting their pills, Coach bags, all these expensive clothing, perfume,
Gym membership?
Oh yeah.
gym.
You might need a massage every once in a while, like every month or so.
Don't forget your therapist.
Yep, and high dollar vehicle.
Oh, yes. Yes, we need to drive a BMW.
And don't ask what their debt is.
No, we're not allowed to ask those. No, like we as men are no longer allowed by women to ask what their debt is until they come to us asking to help them with it. Oh yeah, vacations. That's another good one. All these women, particularly the TikTok ones, they have to go on vacations, right?
Oh yeah. You can find a simp for that, can't they?
Some of them do that, actually.
But women must be so happy right now. I mean, with all the stuff Nick mentioned, that they're getting, and they're living this life, this freedom lifestyle, I bet they don't even have anything to complain about anymore.
Well, they can't find a man to finance it all that has all their impossible standards.
Well, that's because there's no good men out there anymore, Nick.
Mm.
It's the men's fault. It's not the women's fault.
Rollo, he used to show this chart a lot. He had this chart of antidepressant usage by gender and age group, and it's like the 40 and older women were just off the charts compared to everyone else. So yes, Nick, clearly they are just ecstatic about their current standard of living. Clearly. They have to keep sucking down pills.
Well, it worked out for them in their 20s and maybe a little bit in the early 30s, but yeah, it stopped working.
Oh, exactly. It stops working at about, depending on the woman.
Well,
The wall can be anywhere from 30 to, I'll say 40, because there's outliers that pull it that way, but usually it's 35 is the wall for. Now, here's a fun fact about women who are married and have been married for a long time about women when they hit the wall. If you're a 35-year-old woman and you're married and you love and you actually like your guy and you have traditional gender roles, I don't see those women getting on TikTok complaining about all these difficulties associated with the wall. They just kind of go like, yeah, I'm a little older now. Yeah, things ain't quite as tight as they were, but I'm okay.
Yeah, and what's happening to men? How many times does a man have to line up and get beaten over the head with a 2x4 before he says, yeah, I don't want to do that. Oh, you know what? For me, it's twice. But younger men are smarter than me because they're looking around. Oh, man, that guy's got a big bump on his forehead. Oh, there's one over there. Oh, man, I just see that guy. Oh, he just got whacked. Man, these guys are just getting pummeled with these 2x4s right smack on their forehead. And, yeah, I'm not going there.
two things. The longer that this crap's been going on, the longer society shares this experience, especially men. They see it more and more as it's been going on.
Absolutely.
Stories.
Yes.
And now social media.
Yes. Well, what social media did for men was it took that entire process of noticing and put it on warp speed. Because now men literally have these women, talking, celebrating their divorces on their phones right in front of them. And the men are going, why would I even bother with this at all? I'm just going to go play. I don't know what the current hot game is, but yeah, I work too much. I know, but
Yeah,
it's right. I'm just going to go play video games.
Yeah, I think I logged in Diablo 2 for like an hour, like 2 months ago.
So women think DEI benefits them. It may have some benefits to individual women. Yep. Okay. But, and you might, use that empathy thing you have to say, we have to help the underprivileged people who come to our great country and help them out. Okay, great. Yeah, okay, fine. But all this deflates or drives down the ability of your average guy to make the money, to make a decent living. And therefore, there are less guys, American men, who are able to make the money to support the lifestyle which you basically demand from a man in order to become his wife. So, yes, well, you think you're being benefited. If it hurts the men, it's hurting your future chances of finding a man
Yes.
to meet your requirements. But yeah, I know that's hard to understand.
Women don't do second order consequences very well at all, Steve.
I know.
I love my wife, but even she struggles with second order consequences. It's just not in their wiring. That's what men are. That's like one of the major checks on civilization that men provide to women is men take care of the second order consequences.
Yeah, we see that in our group chat sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, there she is. Yeah, there. See you guys. There you go, guys. Yeah, with the pouty face there. No. But it's true. Like the purpose of men is they are walking the watchtower. They're manning the watchtowers. They are walking the walls, right? They are keeping the second order consequences out there so that the women don't have to deal with it. And when you discard your men, when you place yourself above the men, what you're really saying is, don't worry, men, us women, we've got this. We'll take care of it. And as we've seen, what actually happens is, of course, is that the women, as soon as something comes and bites them on the city walls, they go screaming to the men to come save them from whatever funny thing out there.
Help me,
So-
Simps and White Knights.
Yeah. Yeah, Shu, this is actually a great comment. It's trade-offs and choices. You can't get the benefits with path A and path B at the same time. No one can transcend the laws of physics. Exactly. If you say, well, we don't need no men, then the men are going to go, gotcha. I'll be over here playing my video game. And when you do need the man, and he says, video games for the past 6 months, I'm not strong. I can't defend you. I'm, and I don't
Why
really,
should he?
yeah. And what's in it for me if I do,
Mm-hmm.
and then the women are going,
Oh, a lawsuit?
oh, yeah, right.
It's that bad, guys. The guy could step in, right? And still get thrown under for helping the dumb, you know what?
Right. So it's like, why would I step in and help you at all, ever? Even if I wanted to go to the effort to get myself fit and in shape and get my money in order for you, what about you is such a prize that I should put in the effort to do that? And now, of course, we see the weak men epidemic. And, this isn't just a weakness of physicality, although there is that too. This is a weakness of mentality. These men just don't care.
Demoralization has worked. Yuri Bezmenov.
Yeah, it did its job. Now, I still, we did an episode called Future History, 3 weeks ago now, I think. And, I talked about how I'm actually very optimistic for the future. And the reason I'm so optimistic for the future is because tradcons to the otherwise, the great achievements of history were primarily done by single men. Or men with no children. Nikola Tesla, no children. Einstein, no children. There's a guy on Twitter who put together a whole list of people like this. And I'm not saying that having children is bad, but what I'm saying is that going through this period of low birth rates is necessary to produce the kind of men that can build the next stage of our future development. But you have to go through this to get that.
The entire start of the culture of civilizing the Germans was done by single men.
Yeah.
Yes. They lived in monasteries. They built
Celibate
stuff.
men.
celibate single men banded together for a common purpose, serving Jesus Christ, but actually reaching out and helping people. They built stuff, they taught people, they rose the standard of the living standards of people, they brought order. It was all single men banded together with a common purpose.
In my opinion, personally, we do not, particularly with the vilification of single men that's gone on, even in the red pill, which pains me to no end because it's entirely ignorant of history. We do not celebrate single men nearly enough because single men are the ones out there manning the watchtowers, walking the walls, building the churches, building the factories, building the future. Look, a guy with a wife and kids, he is correct to be entirely focused on his wife and his kids. That is the correct response. But you can't be watching the watchtower, watching the walls and manning the watchtowers if you have to spend all of your time either working to provide for your kids or taking care of your kids. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that this veneration of fathers over single men is part of the reason why so many men are going, because think about it from their perspective. These women are shit. They're just as likely to get in trouble legally with them as they are anything else. Okay.
Yep.
Right. And then we come along and we say, oh, by the way, you're evil for not signing up for that. What do you think is going to happen? Venerate the single men in your lives. And I say that as a married man.
Well, you've really outlined the reasons why the Catholic Church maintains the discipline. And it's not a requirement. I mean, theologically, it's a discipline that priests be single and celibate because their interests are not divided by pleasing a wife and pleasing God. Their single-minded focus is pleasing God. Okay, yeah, there's been scandals, there's been other things. It's not worked perfectly. But I'm not saying it will work perfectly. I'm just saying that's the intent.
So, Andrew, you are correct. And if they had been, and if we hadn't defunded the watchtowers 20 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, everything wouldn't be on fire right now. I agree with you where we are. I was trying to speak forward about, like this is what men should be doing. And this is what, in a properly ordered society, this is what men would be doing. I agree with you now, though. Those men are, if there is a watchtower, they're just using it to watch it burn, watch the city burn. So, Shu, I've actually been reading about this a lot lately, and there's a lot of truth in here that I think that people, particularly the Protestant egalitarian church, has really screwed this up, this understanding. And I've read some pretty heinous things around Apostle Paul and what he says. Apostle Paul himself was not married, if I understand correctly, right? Nick, you can.
No.
Yeah. Because he phrased it as to be like me, right?
Yeah. It's never stated implicitly whether he was married or not. I've heard it speculated that when he was Jewish, since he was a Jewish man, he was married. He became separated, even maybe divorced, but celibate, parted ways because his wife remained Jewish, and he became Christian, and he had such great insight into women He wrote about their mentality a lot. That, yeah, I can understand where some people say, yeah, he knew about women. I don't
And
know.
especially today, I would say, see, I was led to believe it is best to be married and be a minister. And yeah, there's some ways you can relate, having interacted with that sex, well, with women, I was going to say that, sex, just with females, and like a wife and raising children that you could as a pastor. But perhaps it's better to do that after they're grown, after the children are grown.
We're not definitively saying one way or another. There's
Mm.
arguments on both sides.
But especially today's environment. I'm
Yeah.
saying, especially in today's environment. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's and that's just why I'm not sitting here trying to denigrate men who have children and families, because my dad did, and I love the guy, and I'm grateful that he did. But I think this vilification of single men is a gross misunderstanding of the situation. It's a gross misunderstanding of where we are today. As Andrew said, the world's on fire, and historically it was single men who would be the ones to run into the fire and solve the problem, because you could not afford to have the fathers die in the fire, because their children needed it. Their children needed them. So if everyone's a father, then you have nobody to run into the fire. Right. And I know we're getting off topic here, but we've been at this for a couple hours, and I think we made our primary point. But
Yeah.
but even then, it is a benefit. The benefits of women go to marriage, going to getting a guy. And what DEI has done has created a rapidly expanding class of single men. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a necessary thing. I think it will be a large part of what helps turn this around. But this has not been a benefit to the women at all. So, that's why I've said, early, Steve, when you originally asked the question, is, well, it depends on what your definition of benefit is. Because if you're a woman and you desperately want to be an airline pilot, well, then it's actually been pretty good for you.
So let me phrase what I think the answer is. The second order consequences are way worse than the first order benefits.
Generally speaking, yes, I would agree with that in a general sense. I mean,
yeah, I asked the question to prompt this discussion. You knew that.
Of course I did. And that's why we ran with it. But yeah, the second order consequences, I think, have been devastating to women, but because women don't do second order consequences very well, it's very difficult to get them to show that, or to get them to see that. So my view is it's not so much about getting them to see it. It's about plunging the women into distress, kind of as a group, and just saying, where we are today with the men just not even bothering with women is causing women distress. And we just need to do more of that.
Men, we're not doing it. Men in general are not plunging women into distress. Women are doing it to themselves.
Yes.
It's happening. Men are not forcing it to happen. We're just standing back and saying, well, gee, I guess it's just happening. I didn't cause this.
Right. We didn't make them do this to themselves, but men are, the men are, particularly the younger generations, they are not stepping up to save women from the second order consequences. And that's what Andrew, he's talking about, the watching it burn is what I think happened is that, to stretch the metaphor even further, the men, particularly, this would be decades ago now, they said, look, this will happen if you do this. I know that there were men out there saying, look, guys, you do this, these bad things will happen. And the women chose to do it anyway. And so the men were like, okay. And now
Well,
the
but
Philistines are
what
burning
about
the
all the
village.
what about all the tradcons out there? We're trying to rally the troops to save the women from the second order consequences.
I would say knock it off. You're just delaying the inevitable. Seriously, like I know it's popular right now to moan about the lack of good men on the women's side and on the tradcon side to moan about the lack of men getting married and having kids. I get that. Do you want this over? Do you want to solve this? Because the only way to solve it is to let the women stew in a cauldron of their own toxic femininity, their own feminism.
Okay, people only change when it's too painful not to change.
Yes.
A society will only change when it becomes too painful not to change. So I think I hear you saying, let the pain increase.
I do. And this is a tough one for me because what I'm kind of saying is that I expect aviation disasters to increase. Particularly now, not just female-led aviation disasters. There's a whole raft of things wrong with the aviation industry. And we touched on that a little bit about, training and could even the men survive good training? Not as many as we need. But that means that people are going to die in job lots. And I fly enough that I could be one of those people. Like, I accept that that's a possibility every time I step onto a plane. Now, I have training and extra stuff. And if something goes, there's certain classes of emergency on an airplane that I can actually intervene in. The one that I showed tonight, no, there's nothing I could have done from the back, but there are, but still,
I think I'm guessing you're going to fly in the big jets that go long distances, which are typically much more experienced pilots. I'm guessing, if possible, you're going to avoid more of the regional carriers.
I definitely do avoid the regionals already. Another trick, and this is a little piece of advice. It's very specific. I fly Delta Airlines a lot. Delta Airlines has a small jet called the 717 on their fleet manifest. And that jet is almost invariably flown by 50-year-old military pilots. It's an older jet. It's an older design, but it's a re-engine design of the old DC-9, and the engines are way too powerful. So even in a fully loaded configuration, the plane leaps off the ground and it kind of feels like a fighter jet. So there's a lot of Delta pilots who will actually intentionally bid this small jet over taking a much higher salary at a big one, just so they can fly this hot rod of a plane. But in general, yes, I've had more problems on the smaller regional stuff than I have on the main line. And really the international stuff it's still flown by a bunch of gray hairs who, flew, Vietnam combat vets, or we're seeing a lot of Iraq One combat vets now. Dudes who flew in the shit and knew and survived and know how to survive. Right. But
right.
So like I just wanted to throw that little piece of advice out there because it's kind of an odd one. Only Delta flies those, but if you see them, they're a lot of fun as a passenger, and I can guarantee you that the pilots up there are enjoying the hell out of their trip and they want to be there. So, it's yeah. It's
So
not going to be pretty.
But do not look down on the chastening. It could be a light. I call this a light chastening of the Lord. by giving us over to natural consequences. Will it be enough? I don't know. I'm hopeful
Well,
of a return to the
isn't that
natural
up to
order,
us?
but
If it's enough, isn't that up to us? That's my thing. Is yes, I'm saying accelerate the decline, but I'm saying that from the standpoint of, okay, we recognize that we are being chastened. We need to let the chastening happen. So instead of trying to stop God from doing God's own will, which is probably actually blasphemy, why don't we just accept that God built these systems the way he did, that these chastenings are part of the plan. And I've been talking about this with the guys and with Elena a lot. When I read the Bible, and who knows, maybe I'm wrong, and Christ, he always talked about helping other people through the problem. He didn't say get out and do God's work for him. It was all the stories, like the Good Samaritan, helping somebody in need along the way, helping somebody who's in trouble, right? Helping somebody understand and prepare for the environment around them, right? Christians, and even in my church, we never really preach this idea that the thing that you have to do is to go out and convince the world to stop doing the bad thing. It's no, just see how many people you can save from the bad thing happening. I don't know, Nick, you tell me if my theology's off or not, but
well, you do help your neighbor. You should be a good watchman. And you should warn them of things that are happening. Say, well, this is kind of what happens when you neglect these things. And there's natural consequences. Right now, we have a light chastening. Could it get worse? Yes. Could it be worse in other places on Earth? Probably. I don't know. I don't know what the future exactly holds, but right now we have a moment. We're experiencing a light chastening right now.
we have an opportunity to learn and course correct here. Definitely.
Yeah. So you offer assistance or help without expecting recognition or reward
Yes. Yes.
in this life.
Yes. I was taught that.
And you live an example that they can see a difference. And you can give them some advice,
If they want to
but
hear it.
you can't save them from themselves. They have to choose and actually seek your wisdom or your solution. It's best if they come and ask rather than you tell them what to do. I don't like when people tell me what to do.
I don't either, but I get told what to do a lot, all the same. And it tends to be for my own benefit.
So, are we concluded tonight?
We are. I mean, we could keep going on these topics
Okay.
for a long time.
So,
but
I'll tell you, next week, I worked something up this morning when I got up. I'd been thinking about it. It's called War Bride Psychology. And I got a lot of stuff, and I'm going to bring together things that really are quite simple. I don't know that anybody's ever done it. And I know I'm not going to do any Evo psych stuff.
ooh, fun.
Talk about modern psychology, a little bit about hormones, a little bit about observations, and what historically has happened. Let's understand that. And then, what's the opposite of War Bride? It's going to be controversial, and I think it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one too. I think we all have things we can say on this topic. And
Oh, yeah.
we'll probably ruffle some feathers with this one too. So, but Steve, is this another one of your the descriptors or the problems episodes?
It might be as impactful as that one.
I'm definitely curious to see what you've got for us now.
Because it's just, there's a lot of these concepts that are out there, and no one's really brought them together and say, wow, this really fits just like this.
Well, that's next week, guys. Yeah, Tacticus. Yeah, we should have Nick bring that up.
Yeah, we mentioned that a little bit.
Yeah, we should have Nick bring that up. All right, everyone. So yes, I got to nerd out this one. That was a lot of fun, and then we derailed ourselves towards the end. That was fun too. If you guys have any questions about anything that was brought up tonight, leave them under the video. I will do my best to get back at them. I'm actually headed into a pretty busy season this summer, so that'll be fun. If you like this, want to hear more, likes don't really matter. I mean, leave them if you want to, but share this video. These are all topics that, I mean, they matter to us, but we bring them up because we are on the watchtowers observing the world going, guys, and we generally only talk to men. So, guys, yeah. And if you want to hear more, drop us a subscribe. Thank you. Later.
There was a firefight! Son of a bitch!